among peoples of the Asian continent. Geographically, in the eyes of most Asianists, the continent does not include Russia. Asianism has gone from an expression of cultural pride vis-à-vis Western imperialism through confrontational supremacism, and very recently, what I have come to call, for want of a better option, constructive cooperativism with the EU as an example. Asianism emerged in Japan in the 1880s and expanded throughout the continent after 1904-05, when Japan became the pride of Asia in the wake of its victory over Russia. Reminisced Jawaharlal Nehru, quote, the Japanese victory was a great pick-me-up for Asia. In India, it lessened the feeling of inferiority from which most of us suffered. Even the brilliant victory, however, did not give Japanese Asianists full confidence. In 1905, Okakura Tenshin, the author of the Book of Tea, in which the very famous statement, "Asia is one," appears, asked combatively, quote, "When will the West understand the East? We are pictured as living on perfume of the lotus, if not on mice and cockroaches. Indian spirituality has been derided as ignorance, Chinese sobriety as stupidity, Japanese patriotism as the result of fatalism." However, the honest Okakura does not slide into Saidist fake Orientalism and introduces the reader to the other side of the coin, quote, "Asia returns the compliment. Our writers in the past informed us that you had bushy tails somewhere hidden in your pants and often dined off newborn babies." Historically, following victories over China and Russia, the Japanese Monroe Doctrine was spawned after the Great War with the emphasis on Japanese leadership. Japan, while clamoring for its own equality with the West, tried its very best to prevent Korean independence and Chinese reunification. Tokyo declared a new order in East Asia in November 1938, and the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere in August 1940 with the appropriate ministry established. In typical Japanese fashion, it was mid-level bureaucrats in the Welfare Ministry in 1942 who produced an 8-volume, 4,000-page report titled "Global Policy with the Japanese Race at the Center," which included a permanent hierarchy of the human race. At the top, the master people, followed by friendly peoples and guest peoples. Burmese nationalist leader Ba Maw, originally an enthusiastic Asianist, stated the following in 1943, quote, "My Asiatic blood has always called to other Asiatics. This is not the time to think with our minds, this is the time to think with our blood." By the end of the war, however, he had been disappointed by the Japanese, quote, "Few people were mentally so race-bound, totally incapable either of understanding others or for making themselves understood by others. For them, there was only one way to do a thing, the Japanese way," end quote. About 2 decades after the end of the Pacific War, Asianism re-emerged in a drastically changed political environment. Imperialism gone, Asia included fully independent nations. Japan was urged by some of its ultranationalists, such as Tokyo Governor Ishihara Shintaro and prominent non-Japanese, particularly Malaysian leader Mahathir Mohamad, to act as a leader of an emerging Asia based on the nation's formidable economic performance and confrontational so-called Asian values. Expressed in 1995 in the book The Voice of Asia, co-authored by Ishihara and Mahathir. Ishihara, quote, "Westerners feel no connection to a loved one after the person dies. To them, the dead are like trash, something to get rid of, while we Asians light candles and lanterns to keep our ancestors' souls to help our ancestors' souls find their way home and then back to the other world again." Mahathir, quote, I would be remiss if I failed to point out what I perceive as the West's moral degeneration due to almost complete separation of religion from secular life. Hence, Western societies are riddled with single-parent families which foster incest, with homosexuality, with cohabitation, with unrestrained avarice. Surely these are the signs of impending collapse. East Asian societies, however, have rejected secularized religion. Muslim societies, given their failings, cannot offer humanity a good model to follow, but they have their merits. There is obviously no need for the kind of women's liberation movement that is contributing to the corruption of the Western world. It is only a matter of time before Muslim nations display the truly Islamic virtues of moderation and flexibility, end quote. Asian regionalism has included ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and in particular ASEAN +3, an attempt at adding Japan, China, and South Korea. In fact, the realization of Mr. Mahathir's segregationist East Asia Economic Group, since it excludes, quote, white, unquote, Australia and New Zealand. A position spelled out by Mr. Mahathir himself, quote, I tell Australians, you can't simply decide to be Asian. You must have an Asian culture. This means improving your manners. Asians don't go around telling others what to do, end quote. Fortunately, there are positive and constructive thinkers in Asia Pacific. First, Prime Minister Mahathir's former deputy, now in jail on trumped-up charges of homosexuality, as expressed in his 1996 Asian Renaissance. Economic stagnation of some Asian countries and even decay in a few may be blamed on the colonial legacy and the inequitable international economic order. However, the East must look beyond the Crusades and colonialism, while the West must look at the East and the rest of the world in a new light, illuminated by humility and sincerity, end quote. The second and most promising example was launched in April 2002, this is contemporary history, of course, when retired Indian diplomat Beni Prasad Agarwal founded the Association of Asian Unity, AAU. He articulated his thoughts in A Practical Way to a New World Order, the idea of the Asian Union. Ambassador Agarwal wrote as follows, quote, the mantle of instability and potential danger for the rest of the world has been taken over by Asia from Europe, whether it is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in West Asia, or the India-Pakistan confrontation in South Asia, or the Korean conundrum in the East. It is Asia which is calling the shots for attention of policymakers and thinkers. The Afghanistan crisis was just the beginning. He considers ASEAN as his variants as inefficient and of limited consequence. Quote, there is a clear lesson for Asia from the European Union. Only when the big powers of Asia, China, India, Japan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey come together will the scene change. Japan is an example for us because it has reached the level of development which all of Asia needs, end quote. What AAU can give initially, as in the case of Europe, is, quote, a mechanism for creating safeguards. Most interestingly, in his view, the clash of civilization as displayed on September 11 has, quote, to be solved in Asia itself first, end quote. Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Sikhism, Taoism, Shintoism are all Asian and make up the Asian cultural ethos. The whole body has no healthy existence without healthy parts, and parts are healthy only when the whole body is healthy. Refreshing thinking indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. You also saved 2 minutes. We're really going great here, except people probably can't say all that they want to. Ah, perdón. Cambié de idioma. Pido disculpa a los intérpretes. Yo sé que les fastidia. Disculpa. Paso la palabra a Santiago Jiménez de nuestra Universidad Huésped. Puede dar tu propio título.
Bien, sí.